So I'm an entrepreneur. I start tech businesses, anything from dynamic pricing and yield management type business to transactional businesses. I use the mobile web and mobile apps as my platform and the cell phone as infrastructure to deliver some information to people to create value in an ecosystem, and I charge money for it.
Have you ever received a letter or notice from a patent holder claiming that you are infringing on their patent?
You know, I have. I think it started with a phone call that I thought was probably out of line would be the appropriate word. They kind of introduced themselves as people who wanted to do business with me, and then in the same kind of breath, the very same breath, said that I was infringing on one of their patents. So I should take their offer, whatever it was. I kind of went back to my attorneys and asked them, look, this is not my area of expertise. I'm business formation, capital raise, recruiting. That's what I do as an entrepreneur. And they said, hey, this is not uncommon actually in our country. People will assert that they have dominion over your work product, and they will use the court system to try to extract some type of license fee. I didn't really ignore it. I wanted to meet with them, but they never met with me. And then one day I got served papers, so I was sued.
How did you handle that?
Well, to be frank with you, look, any type of entrepreneur knows the risks that are associated with starting a business. And myself, I'm an educated guy. I know that there's risk, not just economic risks, but there are legal risks, and you could get sued for just about anything in this country. But in this particular case, I just didn't think I was infringing on their intellectual property. I know what intellectual property is, but I deferred to the attorneys. So I took it to my attorney who recommended a litigator, that I go talk to a litigator, and we kind of outlined a plan as to whether or not we thought it makes sense to either fight these guys either in court or to settle out of court. For me, the asymmetry that was involved in getting sued for something that you're not doing led me to fight. I just didn't want to settle out of court and pay a tax, if you will, to somebody who asserts dominion over me, but literally is not contributing in any way. I think the value proposition of what they offered was way out of line because I wasn't infringing on their patent, and so I decided to fight in court, and so we went that route.
Have patent concerns ever deterred you from pursuing a business or product?
No, you're aware of what intellectual property is when you start a business. You're happy to license any type of third-party technology or software, and for the most part, people who create the software do it for that exact reason, to license it to you. In the case where a company isn't really making a product, but they claim to have some intellectual property, it's a little bit different. It's harder to do because the structure of just signing up online and paying the monthly subscription fee or whatever it is isn't really available. And so you're just aware of all these things, but I haven't been afraid to start and try to execute on one of my ideas and bring them to life because of intellectual property concerns. I try to navigate them. As a matter of fact, I try to design my own IP and get my own patents because I know this is one of the barriers to entry in this country. So I'm the owner of several provisional and non-provisional patents pending myself.
How do you think the current patent system affects entrepreneurship?
Well, I can't really talk about the entire patent system. It's actually a very, very big industry. It's $1 billion industry, not only from the lawyers and the legal side, but just writing the patents and prosecuting the patents. And of course, the USPTO actually makes a lot of money registering patents. I can comment on the software patent side. So there's all types of utility patents and all types of hardware patents and even pharmaceutical patents out there. I'm not really familiar with that. I operate in software, and my problem with software patents is there's a shelf life on software. There's a half-life associated with how long software is really good with. And the real problem is who knows how long it's good for. The reality of the situation is that the answer is not that long. When the patent system was first invented, somebody came up with 20 years was the term of how long patents last. I don't know why they came up with 20 years or how they settled on that, but we should use the same logic that they used to determine that time to figure out a new time. What's the new time on software? I don't know if this is quite true or not, but I just read somewhere that the iPhone 1, I guess the first generation iPhone, came out in 2007, and last month was deemed by Apple as to be obsolete, right? So it's a vintage product now. It doesn't work on the system. You can't fire up an iPhone anymore and talk on it. It doesn't work. I don't know how many patents went into making that thing, but clearly the shelf life was about 6 years. The thing doesn't work anymore. And so it's not 20 years, and it's not 25 years, and maybe it's not 6. But bigger brains and smarter men than me need to get back together at that same table that they got together in back in the 17 or 1800s and figure out what that number is. Because as it stands now, somebody could literally invent something in the 90s that didn't even exist. The language that we write it in didn't even exist back in the 90s and come after you and assert a dominion and tax you for something that didn't really exist back then. So I think there's problems with the software patent system. I think it needs to really be reviewed, especially at the pace of innovation and the opportunity that exists right now, especially in the mobile software world.
Do you think patent trolls are part of the problem as a financial drain and a distraction for entrepreneurs?
Well, look, who knows what a patent troll is? I think it's a pretty pejorative term. If I do feel sorry for, I guess in most cases it's the plaintiff or somebody who says they have intellectual property that's not really practicing. They're not making a product at all, but it's probably because they failed, right? They failed to execute. But the one thing they do have is this piece of property, and they're trying to recover economics. I feel bad because they failed. There were probably a number of things that went wrong in their company, and one of them is probably luck. And so what I look at it is just kind of like this zombie company, the shell of a company that kind of still exists, and it's coming back to kind of suck the blood out of the new companies that maybe even had better resources or access to newer technology that made something that was probably cost ineffective before, cost effective now. But coming to extract a tax on something that's not being produced is again, it's asymmetric. It doesn't really make any sense. If you make a device or you make some software, then compare that software with the new software. For the most part, the real problem is that a lot of these patents are very, very broad. They're very, very vague. They're very, very ambiguous. So the way they're described really kind of encompasses every single time. And they're actually built this way on purpose because otherwise they're not really valuable, right? And so they're built this way on purpose. And I think maybe some of the problem lies with the system itself, right? And these things shouldn't even be improved in the first place. And so the patent prosecutors themselves either need to be just a little bit more strict or better educated on the complete ecosystem and how this might impact future innovation, or to use a better term, how it might destroy future innovation if it's approved.
How can the software patent system be improved?
I believe the software patent system just needs to be talked about. Smarter minds than me, people who have experience that go back, entire careers in the legal patent system, and software engineers, developers, the whole ecosystem really needs to come around the table and really design something that preserves intellectual property for people who do it properly and disrupts or destroys the opportunity for people who are just kind of squatting on something that was approved yesteryear and waiting for somebody to invent something that they think is even remotely close to what they invented way back in the day. I think one of the solutions might be to talk about the useful shelf life of a patent. Another one would be to have some of these cases settled not in the courts where they're extremely expensive, where very talented and disciplined attorneys that have a very narrow understanding of a very, very deep discipline. Like if you're going to be a patent attorney, you don't just, and I'm not saying this lightly, like, any attorney, is an English major, but you have to have like a chemistry major. You have to go to school for physics or even computer science, and then go to law school, right? And transition and understand law as well, and get into this discipline. It's very, very slim discipline, and these guys are very expensive. And so we need to figure out a way where disputes can be resolved without getting a lot of lawyers, a lot of judicial court systems involved that actually soak up very, very precious resources. I mean, everyone knows that the courts are already overloaded. Let's go back to the patent system, the people who have prosecuted and reviewed these patents and approved them, and have them figure it out at a much cheaper way. It should cost as much as the cost to file, or less, not 6 or 7 digits of money.
Describe the current patent system in just one word.
It's stale. I guess that's the word. I mean, it's tough to boil down what it is. It's important, and it's a part of our society, and it really preserves. It's designed to preserve and protect the innovator. That's what it was designed to do, but it's not doing that now. Currently, at least not in the software patent system. It's different for pharmaceuticals and drugs, and the amount of money and research and time you have to pour into that. But it's got to be changed, and I think it's stale.